Hello, Mia. Thanks for meeting me at the museum today to look at some new artistic styles. Let's head inside now. Some of these romantic paintings should look familiar from a previous lesson. Hey, Mia, not so fast. Good job, Mia. This is The Old Musician by Edouard Manet. If you're thinking that this painting looks different from the idyllic ones of peasants and royalty that we've seen before, you're right. This is an example of realism, an artistic movement during the Industrial Revolution that aimed to show life as it was, not as it should be. Previously, we explored how romantic poets, composers, and artists celebrated nature and beauty while fueling nationalist pride. Today, we'll investigate a major shift among artists in the Industrial Revolution and why it occurred. As Europe began to industrialize in the mid-19th century, artists and writers noticed that industrial life seemed opposed to the ideals of Romanticism. Realism reflected hardships of the working class and gave a voice to the less fortunate, making it an important tool for inspiring social change. Our goal in this lesson is to answer the following questions. What is realism? How did realism in art reflect a larger change in the world? How was realism depicted in literature? How did it help inspire change? What is Impressionism? Why did Impressionism emerge as a reaction to realism? Try to keep this big picture question in mind as we take this journey together. What can art tell us about life and how can it inspire change in the world? During the Industrial Revolution, the world became a very different place than it was during the Romantic era. Many people experienced harsh living and working conditions. Rather than glorifying society, artists began to paint things as they were. Realist artists didn't try to make their subjects seem more beautiful as they might have previously. They focused on life on Earth rather than on religious implications and didn't try to teach a lesson or value. Hey, Mia found us a great example of realism. This is The Stonebreakers by Gustave Courbet. Take a moment to look closely at the painting. How does it make you feel? Does it make you proud to live in this world? You may have noticed the workers' clothes are torn and shabby, that they look strange and uncomfortable, or that the boy carries heavy rocks while the man leans over to crush stones. Observe the dull, dark colors. The painter was trying to portray the reality for workers at the time. Let's move on to our next painting. Oh, wow! They weren't kidding when they said their goal was to be lifelike. Wait, that's a photograph. While realist paintings tried to reflect the lives of actual people, photography allowed the truth of these subjects to be captured with scientific precision. The first widely accessible photographs were called daguerreotypes. This new art form allowed the reality of the lives of the working class to be accurately portrayed for the first time. After daguerreotypes, advances in photography came quickly to the industrialized world. William Talbot invented a light-sensitive paper to produce photographic negatives, which could create many prints. This caused realism to spread worldwide through channels like newspapers. As this was cheaper, easier, and able to be copied, photographers began taking pictures of cities and life within them. One photographer, Jacob Riis, created staged photographs of city life in the late 1800s to get striking images of the harsh living conditions for workers. While Romanticism inspired nationalism, realism inspired a push against the system. As realism reached the mainstream, it inspired many to challenge the inequality between the wealthy business owners and the average laborer. Let's pause the video here and answer the following questions in your PDF. What is realism? How did realism in art reflect a larger change in the world? Art comes in many forms, and while photographers and painters were creating images of life to motivate change, authors were creating novels to bring the stories of the overlooked to life. Realism in literature focused on objective reality, the parts of a place or a moment that are tangibly present without making assumptions or changes. Novels told the stories of many groups of people, not just the affluent white men of mainstream society. For example, the short story The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman shows the main character's descent into depression after childbirth in a time when mental health was often overlooked, especially for women. A particularly important piece of realist literature was The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. This novel exposed the horrific labor and sanitary conditions in U.S. meatpacking factories. Its gritty scenes didn't shy away from gruesome details, such as describing how canned meats were purposefully being mislabeled to hide the fact that they actually contained horse meat, which was cheaper and far less desirable. The Jungle's ability to expose the truth through a story created a public outrage, and eventually readers began pushing for social reform, which culminated in the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act of 1906. Literature was a powerful tool for change in the Industrial Revolution because stories allowed people to identify with others who they might not interact with in real life. Let's pause the video here and reflect on the following questions. How was realism depicted in literature? How did it help inspire change? It looks like Mia has found a very different style of painting. This is an example of Impressionism, an artistic movement that began in Paris in the 1860s and aimed to capture a single moment by bending light and color. Despite being a departure from realism, Impressionism was also an important art form in expressing the human condition. Impressionists found realism to be constricting. Rather than depicting the harsh realities of the objective world, Impressionists tried to capture the feelings, ideas, and nature of humans at a given moment. It aimed to create freedom and expression for artists. One of the most influential Impressionist painters was Claude Monet. Here is one of his paintings now. Take a moment to look closely at the painting. Ask yourself, how does this make me feel? Does it give you a different feeling than the realist paintings? This is Monet's Ducal Palace, Venice. The painting aims to record the perceptions of the human eye rather than the physical reality of the palace, and is a great example of how Impressionist painters portrayed light on landscapes and buildings. Look for the signature short strokes of many brighter, lighter colors than in realist paintings. Impressionists tried to capture the human experience in many different forms, for example, through music. Composers began to create impressions of moods and atmosphere within their pieces. They used different combinations of instruments, tone patterns, and musical structures to create mental pictures of things like flashing lights or the feel of a warm summer's day. You might not have noticed, but you've been listening to a famous Impressionist composer, Claude Debussy, since we came into this section of the museum. Take a few seconds to listen to the music. How does it make you feel? What scene do you think the composer was trying to capture? Impressionism sought to free people from the darkness and confining nature of realism. It inspired people through creativity and self-expression. Pause the video here and answer the following questions. What is Impressionism? Why did Impressionism emerge as a reaction to realism? As the world around us changes, so does the art we create. Looking at art from different eras allows us to study how people saw the world at the time. It teaches us what was important to people, how they saw the human condition, and what they wanted to change in society. Realism and Impressionism were important shifts in the artistic world that were both reactions to and inspirations for change. As our field trip comes to a close, I hope you have learned that history comes in many forms. It is more than textbooks and speeches. It is art, music, and literature, so always keep your eye out because history is everywhere.
Hey, hey.